Welcome in, everybody. Rockets finally get a W, 119 to 113 at home over the Chicago Bulls. It was not pretty. It was scary. There's a lot to talk about from this game. But basically, this was a big win that they needed to have with two basically strong West contenders on deck, OKC and Minnesota. But Rockets get a big win. I'm going to throw it to you, Ben, because there's plenty to talk about for sure, as far as individual performances, but thank goodness they finally get the dub.
Yeah, I mean, even with this win, you're 10-10 in your last 20 games, but it's better than having a losing record. So this was one they desperately needed to stabilize themselves. And it would be foolish for me to say, oh, they figured it out based on, well, certainly the box score. You beat an underhanded Bulls team by 6 points at home. It's not a win that at the end of the year you'll look back on and say, wow, this was really impressive. This was the peak Houston Rockets. No, on the balance, they underwhelmed tonight as well. And it's been an underwhelming stretch for 6 weeks. But I will say the way they won that game, they sort of looked and basically stared adversity in the face. I mean, they were losing with 3, 4 minutes left in this game. And if they had lost this one with OKC and Minnesota coming in later this week on a back to back with the 0-3 road trip, I mean, any team would be close to a breaking point if you put them in that spot. I don't care who their leadership is. I don't care who their coach is. So this was a game the Rockets almost had to win. And so for them to sort of stare all of that in the face, have a bad shooting night, Dave, I texted you midway through the fourth quarter. They were 4 of 20 from three. That's just unacceptable from a make percentage and just a volume standpoint in today's NBA. They had everything going wrong. And yet, in the last few minutes, they rescued it, most notably with the guy who's been at the forefront of those shooting struggles the last few games, Jabari Smith Jr., scoring 8 points late in the game, including 2 huge threes. I think at one point, Dave, he was 0 for his last 20? Was that right?
Yeah, he had missed 20 straight, dating back to the
Yeah.
first Portland game. He had missed his final two, missed 10 in a row, missed three, missed his first five tonight.
Yeah. And to see him make two late in the game when everything was on the line, this wasn't just one of 82. This was one when you consider the 0-3 road trip, when you consider who's coming in later this week, that the Rockets had to have. There was a lot of pressure in this game. And after starting so slowly, after missing all those shots early, and for the guy who's missed a lot of those shots the last few games to be the one who sort of snaps you out of it late, that can be potentially, in my opinion, a galvanizing effect. This can be something that they build off of. I'm not going to say for sure because, 10-10 in the last 20 games, there have been moments before this that I've said, okay, this is the November Rockets. This is them figuring it out. And then it's lasted a game or two and it hasn't been anything sustainable. But if you want to draw up a feel-good win for this particular team, considering how they've lost lately, having Jabari Smith Jr. rescue them late in the game is the way to do it.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about, we have to talk about Jabari because he's been a big story for a long while. KD and Sengun were doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the offense. Both hit over 50% from the field. Both took a combined 41 shots, 23 for KD, 18 for Sengun. They were really good. We'll talk about those guys. You just have to talk about Jabari first because it's kind of the story.
Right.
When we were talking, back and forth during the game, I was saying, I don't know if Jabari needs a shrink or what. Like, he just is off, and he's not off consistently. And this has happened before. And I'm just like, this is a mental thing. I actually feel for him because I just like Jabari as a person as well. I just think this guy has a strong work ethic. He wants to be good. He's just, I don't know, he's just a good all around person. I want to see him succeed. And just, it wasn't dropping for him. And for that to happen, it just kind of alleviates some of the concerns about him just beating himself up internally because he did kind of win this game. Now, granted, they might not have been in that position if he had, made a few shots earlier or something of that to that effect, but he hit that three, the dam broke, hits that, 17-footer or dribble into a pull-up, nails it, which was a big shot, and then another three, and you're like, okay, welcome back, Jabari. Because I hope people realize, and we said this in the previous shows, Jabari was really good up till 6 games ago. And then just literally the bottom fell out. And I
Yeah.
don't know what, happened. If he got inside his head, the 0 for 10 certainly shook him. And I think that Portland game, the second one especially, you can put entirely on him. I think that's fair. But, tonight for him to hit those big shots, it's just a good sign moving forward when you got these opponents on deck.
The quote from Jabari in the walk-off that you put on your Twitter feed, Dave, Teammates believed in me. They kept passing it to me. Everybody told me to keep my head up. I think that also extends to the coaching staff. I think it spoke volumes that Ime Udoka trusted him. Now, in part, with Tari Eason and Dorian Finney-Smith out tonight, I think the Rockets are clearly loading up for that Oklahoma City game on Thursday. I'll be very intrigued to see how they play on Thursday because as bad as it's looked of late, I think a lot of these recent games have been them playing down to the competition, which has been a theme for a lot of this season. I think Thursday against OKC, with the one they let get away back in the regular season opener, it would not surprise me if this is a really good game for the Rockets. Not guaranteeing a win or anything crazy, but I think we'll see a pretty good effort on Thursday. I think that's part of why they held Tari Eason and DFS out tonight, even though on Sunday, Ime said they got good news on the Tari MRI of his ankle and that he was game to game. So to circle back to Jabari, without Tari, without DFS, the options are fairly limited. I thought it was telling that the first reserve off the bench for Ime Udoka was JD Davison, who played pretty well and actually closed out this game in key moments of the fourth quarter. One criticism I had, when I talked the last couple of games about the potential of benching Jabari, I said, who do you bench him for? Because so many of the options on that bench, when you look at the Josh Okogie, Aaron Holiday, Clint Capella, Jayshawn Tate types, they're one-dimensional. Well, JD Davison is the one guy that's not one-dimensional. I think that's why Ime Udoka gave him a look tonight. He's got a little bit more creativity to him, and I think that benefited the Rockets at times in this game. But with Tari and DFS out, JD was your fifth starter, basically, or he filled that fifth starter role in high leverage minutes in this game. So Jabari was basically, your fourth guy. And going into the year, we know Ime Udoka pointed to Jabari as the fourth entrenched starter alongside KD, Sengun, and Amen. So even if he's struggling, if things are so bad that you have to pull your fourth best player, even when you don't have Tari Eason or Dorian Finney-Smith, think about the message that sends. As frustrating as it was to watch Jabari these last few games, I do think that's part of why Ime Udoka had a longer leash than people thought. Who are the options that he can turn to, especially trying to fill out Jabari's height defensively? Because we know that's a big part of the formula for the Rockets on that side of the ball. And after an underwhelming first half, I did think they defended pretty well in the second half of that game. So it would have been, the easy thing to do would just be to say, oh, Jabari, he's shook. He doesn't have it. Let's yank him. But I think Ime Udoka just looked at this and said, if I pull him, what message does that send? And who can I reasonably turn to that's going to give me a clearly superior chance to win this game? The best chance to win the game was just to trust the guy that going into the season, you clearly identified as the fourth best player on this team and just give him enough playing time that eventually he's going to figure it out. The sample is going to normalize. And I think that's ultimately what happened. And so Jabari credits his teammates, but I think, the coaches deserve some credit as well. They stuck with him and finally they got rewarded.
Yeah, with Ime Udoka, it is, you nailed it, Ben. It's trust. It's like he trusts Jabari. Now, granted, I understand Jabari did not return that trust in these last several games with his shot. I thought some of the defensive stuff people were talking about was a little overblown. I really did. I thought he had a couple of bad defensive moments. I just thought some of that was exaggerated. But the shot is not exaggerated. It completely abandoned him. But he trusts him. He knows where to be. Yeah, know how to rotate, how to switch, how to defend. He trusts him. And I want to give a good example, and I'm not trying to throw this in anybody's face, but if you remember last year, he had a trust level with Jalen Green, and Jalen Green had some bad clunker games. We can talk about that for sure. Everybody wanted to throw in Cam Whitmore, and I saw a lot, not everybody, but I mean, a lot of people on Twitter just, why is Ime not playing Cam Whitmore over Jalen Green? This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. And we're kind of seeing Cam Whitmore now on a team where he should be getting just a ton of run, has had plenty of issues himself. I mean, Ime, I just trust Ime with his rotations. I've seen some, I know Kevin O'Connor was talking about whether, whether Ime's even the right coach for the Houston Rockets. I totally disagree if there's, in somebody saying that he's the wrong coach. I understand the offensive concerns, but anyway, to the actual point, it's just he has a trust level with Jabari on how to play, and you just have to hope he breaks this slump. And I'm hoping this three-shot hit at the end where the 8-0 run turned a 1-point deficit into a 7-point advantage is a sign that he's breaking out of it.
And you go back to one of their biggest wins last year, that NBA Cup victory over Golden State, when Jalen struggled to create offense against the Warriors, but in terms of knowing where to be, who was it that dove on the floor and got that loose ball and secured the winning free throws? It was Jalen Green. I don't think Cam Whitmore is making that play. And I think that's a little bit of the same dynamic that we're seeing with Jabari Smith Jr. now. There's value in that even when he's not making shots, there's still a relatively high floor in terms of what he means for the collective. That's why he's gotten a leash. Now, it's not an unlimited leash. If he shoots, 0 of 8 and a quarter the way he did in Portland, and especially if the Rockets have a fully healthy roster, maybe it's a different story if the Rockets had had Tari and DFS tonight. Maybe it would have been a different story in Portland if they had Tari and Sengun. But if you're already shorthanded and the guys on your bench outside of maybe JD Davison are as one-dimensional as this team's, and I don't know if this is really an indictment of Rafael Stone, because the guys are talking about one-dimensional, like they're at spots like I'd say 10 through 14 on the depth chart going into the season. Like how many teams don't have one-dimensional players in those spots on their depth chart? It sort of comes with the territory. So a lot of it comes down to injuries, and I think that's, another factor for why Jabari has gotten the leash that he has. But yeah, at some point, even if, logically, you can point to all these factors and say, yeah, we don't know if there's anybody clearly superior. Yeah, with a larger sample, this should turn around. He was really good through calendar year 25. At some point, the ball's actually got to go through the bucket or emotion is going to take over. And it felt like tonight was just a critical point. Like if they lost this game at home where, say what you will, Dave, it was ugly, but they're now 12-2 at Toyota Center. They're 11-12 on the road. They are 12-2 at home, 23-14 overall. So they've got a ton more home games coming up, including 4 more on this homestand. If they had lost this game tonight with Jabari having another clunker, but this time in Toyota Center, that would have been a point of no return. And so, well, no return might be a little bit dramatic, but it would be close to that.
Yeah.
And so, again, they sort of stared, I don't know if they stared death in the face, but they stared a tipping point in the face, and they came out on the other side of it. And that's why we're spending so much time talking about Jabari. You look at the box score, KD had 28 and 10, and he shot above 50% overall. Well, he's been brilliant this season. We've talked about that. Alperen Sengun, his second game back from the ankle sprain, 23, 11 assists, 7 rebounds, above 50% shooting. Defense, but somewhat to be expected after that long layoff. Trey Jones cooked him on switches, but Trey Jones was cooking a lot of guys.
Trey Jones
to be
was
fair.
insane today. What the world?
What did he finish with?
11 of 12, 34.7 assists. 11 of 12, a small guard. Trey Jones, 5 of 6 from 3. Yeah, that's
and then
for the Rockets.
And then Amen Thompson, 23 points. 10 of 10 from the free throw line, which
that's unbelievable. That's a great sign.
For all the talk about a men's jumper not coming along, the fact that he has made clear progress on free throws is real hope.
And he hit a 3
2 years old.
He hit a 3. I was like,
a big 3 at a key spot in the game too.
It was
right after that 4 of 20 stat that I texted you.
Not the 4th, yeah.
But even with Amen, we had talked about this the other night. Since December 1st, he's been 28-5 on like 62% true shooting as far as his average stats per game. So as weird as it is for a team that's been underwhelming for a while, the big guns have been performing, at least statistically. It's the variables. It's the guys like Jabari and Reed Sheppard that, especially the last 5 to 10 games, have really tailed off. And so that's why we're talking about Jabari. It's not saying he was the best player on the floor tonight or anything close. No, but those other guys have been very good for a while. Jabari is the guy that, has gotten all the criticism the last few games. So I think it's only fitting that we spend, a lot of tonight's show, singing his praises, because he was the difference. I mean, you get this version of Jabari on the road trip and you probably go 2-1 at worst.
Yeah. I'll give Sengun his flowers as well. 10 of 18 from the floor, 23 points, 11 assists, 7 boards. Would have liked to see him a little bit better on the boards. There were a couple of moments, but I mean, overall, really good game. He missed his first 3 shots too. So he hit 10 of his final 15 and was plus 19. Like there was a gap when he was on the floor, they succeeded. So, Sengun was certainly offensively really good tonight. And I think, like I said, 11 assists. He was the hub for the most part, passing the ball around, moving it. So yeah, got to give him a lot of credit. And KD had a couple of moments where, he just said, screw this, when, from beyond the 3-point line, just took it straight to the basket for jams. In the 4th happened twice. So give him a lot of credit as well. You highlighted those guys in Amen as well. And also to credit to Sengun. Rockets only took 24 threes, so they didn't lean on, I mean, maybe that's a team thing because, like, they're really struggling, but at 29.2%, I believe this is the most efficient game they've had in their last 6. They've been all in the low 20s in the last 5, so,
And
go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, I looked up Amen's free throw percentage. He's now above 80% for the year, 80.6. So just remarkable progress. Sorry to interject, but
But
I
no,
was checking stat news.
and it was last year, what, 69? Something, it was something
Something
like
like
that?
that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah, so that is a huge jump for a free throw shooter. I'd like to see this start to translate to being at least a 30% three-point shooter. We're still a ways away from that, but yeah, positive sign for Amen. But yeah, tonight, I think the defense was a problem in the first half. That, they gave up, I believe, 60. It just, there were some issues for sure in that first half. I thought they cleaned it up a little bit better in the second half. But the other thing, they were outshot tonight. The 94 shots for the Bulls, 88 for the Rockets. This is similar to the Sacramento game. So that superpower was gone, and so it's so close. You don't have just this insane, overwhelming talent that just kills people. You've got to win the turnover battle. You've got to win the rebounding battle. And tonight, they did win the rebounding 61-47, but not offensively. They had 14 offensive boards, Houston's 12. And that's, with the limited turnovers that the Rockets forced, is the reason Chicago got up, more shots than Houston. So that's why this was close. And it's scary because you'd expect this Rockets team, the way they played early in the year, to just blow out the Bulls. And it is close with OKC and Minnesota on deck. I'm just hoping.
And to circle back to the comment that you put on screen a few minutes ago, someone asked me if I thought the Rockets would make a move. I checked in after Sunday because it felt like that was the low point. And the response I got from someone inside the building was basically, we hope not. And what I think they mean by that is they would rather not make a move because on paper, this team is set up well, not just for now, but into the future. We've talked about it certainly last offseason after the KD trade and after things looked so great, 13-4 through October and November of this year. You have this team that's very good right now, but you have these young players who are still getting better. And whatever options you theoretically have as salary filler, it's not really the right time to look at moving a Fred VanVleet or a Dorian Finney-Smith because they're not healthy. In Fred's case, they're not playing at all. So you'd be selling low on them, to say the least, even if you try to use them as matching salary. You don't want to panic on any of your young guys. So in terms of trades that move the needle from an asset perspective, or more notably, a financial perspective, who are you going to trade at this point to get someone significant? Like if hypothetically it's someone like a Giannis, I mean, that's a different conversation because obviously you're going to have to give up a ton of assets no matter what. That's just how it works. But if it's for one of these, more moderate upgrades that a lot of fans want, in a perfect world, now isn't the time. In a perfect world, you have enough and maybe you get Fred back in a limited capacity by the playoffs and you give this team a run and you learn more in the playoffs, high leverage games down the stretch of this season. You get more data points and you reevaluate this thing in the summer when also some of your veterans are going to be a little more movable from an asset perspective.
Right.
Like, I think ideally the Rockets would wait until the summer, but as you've pointed out many times, Dave, they have a 37-year-old Kevin Durant still close to the peak of his powers. And you can't waste a season like what you're seeing now from KD. So if they stabilize in the next month, and honestly, they should, they have a ton of home games coming up, then I do think you largely ride it out. I'm not going to say you do nothing. Maybe you move Clint Capella for some backcourt help. Maybe you just take advantage of your spot near the front of the line on the buyout market and add some backcourt depth there. Maybe you get Fred back. But I think if you can stabilize, that's the likely course. But if the bottom falls out, they don't want to panic. They don't want to make a panic move in which they deal one of their young guys too early and then he breaks out elsewhere. They don't want to use one of your veterans like Fred or DFS as salary filler when they think at least a year from now, they'll be clearly more than just salary filler in terms of the quality of their play. Like, they don't want to do that. But if the season's going off the rails and yet you still have Kevin Durant in all-star, probably all-NBA mode, like at some point, something has to give. And I think tonight, I'm not going to say one game fixes it, but it offers hope that maybe, just maybe, it's not to say that it's championship or bust this year, but you at least want to get to the playoffs feeling like you have a a realistic chance to make some noise. I think the goal inside the building, win 50 plus games, and even if you're, a mid-tier seed, okay, be a mid-tier seed like the Warriors last year. We saw what they did to the Rockets and what they, I think, would have done to the Timberwolves if not for Steph Curry's hamstring going out in game one of that second round series. I think that's sort of the model for the Rockets at this point. Just get into the playoffs. They're not that far off of a 2-3 seed, so I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think the goal is just try and get to the playoffs healthy. The games are more spread out, dial up the usage for Kevin Durant, and see what you learn. Maybe Fred's back by that point. But if for some reason it goes off the rails the next few weeks, I don't think that's what the Rockets are expecting. I don't think it's what they want to see. But in a scenario where it does go off the rails, you can't rule out the possibility that they do something more aggressive. I think they're just hoping they won't have to.
Yeah, and the question was asked, are the Rockets interested in John Morant? I believe no.
No.
Definitively no. And the same Trae Young, no. They, are trying to groom Reed Sheppard, right? And they really believe in Reed Sheppard. I know some people are complaining about the minutes, and I get it. But they're still developing him, grooming him for that spot. And you still got Amen, who they also believe is a point guard. I know others, don't believe that, but he's not there right now. But they're, wanting him to be an on-ball presence. Let's put it that way, rather than point guard or try to be more of a primary leader creation. So I don't necessarily see that happening. But, when Fred comes back, whenever that is, you're going to have a question then too, right? If Reed develops like you want and you want him playing significant minutes and Amen, he's going to fit, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying you're going to have that question too. I think they're looking more for a low turnover, solid, stable presence if they're going to add anybody like that. They want a Fred basically back. So that's how I see it. I personally don't think they're going to do anything there. And to your point about we certainly hope not, I think it's like, well, unless this team just completely craters, which we're hoping is not the case, that they're going to stay the course, and we'll see in the summer.
And I see a lot of comments in the chat about Reed Sheppard. In his last 12 games, he's now shooting 40% overall and 32% from three. I've said this before, his model at this point in his career is just not going to work if he's shooting that low from 3-point range. It's just that simple. And quite frankly, some of these games, he might have had stat lines comparable to Jabari. It's just the leash from Ime is a lot shorter for Reed because he's not providing any defensive value. So he's not out there to have an 0 of 8 quarter the way Jabari did in Portland. But in many ways, that's really the difference here. They've both been slumping. It's just, it doesn't feel like Reed's slump is quite as pronounced, because if it's a bad game for Reed, Ime will pull him. He's not going to give him the leash that he does with Jabari, because at least Jabari provides some value defensively as a connector with his size, those types of things. But the bottom line with Reed, and it's a delicate balance, like, you do want to develop him. He still has every bit of upside that we thought he did coming out of Thanksgiving when he had that amazing game at Golden State. None of that has changed. And so it's important to play him. You can't yank him from the rotation. And I think in every game, he's gotten at least 15 minutes, and in most, I would say closer to 20 to 25. He was, I want to say, even though he didn't close that, he was at 22, I think. Even with JD Davison getting 25, I think Reed had 22 minutes. So
22. Yeah, 22 minutes.
Yeah. So Ime it's a delicate balance. I think that's why JD Davison hasn't gotten a look earlier. I'm sure some people are going to ask, if they like JD Davison this much, why hasn't he played in weeks from a rotation standpoint? And I think it's because they fear, if they go with Reed and JD Davison, are they too small? And at this point, beggars can't be choosers. I think tonight they just said, hey, we got to figure it out. And they made it work. But the reason they haven't done it earlier, they're still playing Reed, even though some people would like him to play more. And I get why, from a developmental perspective, this is nothing like last year where he fell out of the rotation. No, he's playing, 20 plus minutes at a minimum. He just needs to make more shots. I think he will. It hasn't happened yet. And I just want to hit that home, not to pick on Reed, but I just think in some ways his slump has gotten overlooked because he doesn't have the terrible games from a shooting perspective, just because if they're going too off the rails, Ime just doesn't play him. And so it just doesn't stand out to the extent that it does with Jabari when he's like, 6 of 21 and 0 of 8 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I think he just needs to get more and more comfortable. He's made, grown by leaps and bounds since the start of the year. The start of the year was like, oh boy, there's still some issues here. He's grown quite a bit. It's kind of like an actor. He's got to get in a play or something. He's got to get all his lines down, know exactly where to be in his moments. I don't want to basically put in question drafting him because I'm not there at all. But I did find it interesting with Trey Young when he went on the block that a lot of talking heads from the NBA were talking about how the league is shifting away from small guards. Did you see that?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, we basically invested quite a bit in Reed Sheppard. I think you've got to hope for a Curry, a poor man's Curry type model where he's a really efficient shooter and he can off of one screen quickly get his shot. He's going to get more run is about the best way I could say it. But those defensive concerns are very real. The size concerns are very real. We're going to see those in the playoffs. But he's had those games, as you mentioned, Ben, against Golden State. I think there was another one against Denver where you're just like, wow, this guy could light it up in a hurry. I will say Denver probably wasn't scouting, hadn't scouted Reed enough or something in that particular game because they weren't covering him enough. But I do
He
like
played well in that latter game in Denver as well, though, to his credit.
I can't remember the order of them, but
I think it was the most recent one that Saturday. But yeah, you're right. That first game, Rockets Nuggets, I don't think they had really scouted him. But the second two, he still played pretty well. And they actually closed out the one that the Rockets had basically stolen from them by that terrible officiating. If you recall, Reed was in the closing lineup when they stormed back and nearly won it, if not for the Amen foul on Tim Hardaway Jr. Foul in air quotes here.
Yeah.
But so there's lots to like about Reed. He's had his moments. He's just in a down stretch right now. And it's just for Ime Udoka, it's just a delicate balancing act. Like they need to get him enough minutes to where he still has a chance to develop and shoot his way out of it. Again, so much of it's going to come down to whether he makes enough shots given his current limitation, but they're not going to guarantee him. This is no longer a team where just for developmental purposes, you say this guy's got to play 25, 30 plus minutes no matter what. No, when you have a 37-year-old Kevin Durant playing the way he is, it's win now. And that's the balance. And it's not easy. Like I get the criticisms, but to circle back to what we were saying earlier about Ime Udoka, this is why I think you and I give him the benefit of the doubt is that the last 2 years, he's done a pretty phenomenal job, in my opinion. Well, certainly the overall performances of those teams, but also, blending development versus maximizing short-term wins. I think by and large, he's succeeded on both fronts, maybe not perfectly, but relative to when he took the job, all of these young players that, have been in the program for now 2.5 years have clearly taken leaps forward. So not saying that guarantees that he's going to succeed this year, but the fact that he's outperformed expectations the first 2 years and the fact that, look, this year it is hard. Like when you have all these veterans and you have all these expectations, and then your young guys like Jabari and Reed go through a rough patch, how do you balance, trying to maximize every minute versus playing the long game and trusting that not only are they going to shoot themselves out of slumps, but in the long run that you're going to be better because they shoot their way out of it and they gain confidence. It's tough. And that's why I give Ime a little bit of grace. It's not giving him indefinite grace, but when we're talking about maybe, half of one season that they've been a little bit underwhelming, that's why I tend to give him the benefit of the doubt, at least for right now.
Yeah. And I'll just say, I know we're basically running out of time here, but defense is my concern right now. I mean, the 3-point shooting is probably number one, but I do think that's just going to come back to form. It just can't stay this way forever. Certainly Jabari's not, well, knock on wood, miss that many in a row again or anything like that. Hopefully this shot starts to drop for all of these guys because a lot of them are missing shots. You're going to get Tari back. He should be close. I don't know if he'll be back for the OKC game, but he's close. And DFS, I'm not sure the exact situation. He was out today. Defensively is where Ime has to have this team in a position that of trust for defense. The offense will come. He'll run Sengun, he'll run KD, and he's hoping those guys and being special or whatever on the offensive side can lead them there. But the defense has to be there, and it's just been hit or miss. It gotten a little bit better, but I don't know what it ended up being today. But it's just. Yeah.
And I do think some of the issues in recent games have been made worse by the terrible shot making. I think defensively, especially late in the Sacramento game and early tonight, there were guys that were trying to do way too much because they felt there was zero margin for error. When you're not making shots on the other end, when you're 4 of 20 from 3 in 42 minutes, it's easy to think that you've got to shut down anything from the other team. And in reality, you can't close out on everything. There were so many possessions early in this game, particularly the first half, when I thought the Rockets were playing way too aggressive and They ended up getting blown by or put in a compromised position because someone had to help. And before you know it, the entire defense collapses. And I think a lot of that comes down to a lack of trust. You're not making shots. And with the guys injured, you're having to play the likes of Josh Okogie and JD Davison more. That hurts your floor spacing. You're not able to put up threes at volume. And so I think the defense fell apart. Well, number one, when the body language isn't great and when you're struggling with confidence, a lot of defense comes down to effort. And there were definitely some slump shoulders early in this game and the last two in Portland and Sacramento. But also, I just think it's only natural when things aren't going your way, you start to see, especially younger players, trying to do too much. And, there's some guys on the Bulls, if Vucevic wants to take a contested 18-footer, let him. You don't have to close out or switch hard on everything to where you put Trey Jones in a spot where he can just blow by your big man for an easy bucket. Like, you don't have to defend as aggressively as the Rockets did tonight. And I think a lot of that was just due to desperation in what's been going on the last few games. But to close on a positive note, Dave, I pulled up the standings. So there's been a lot made of, the Rockets fell behind the Suns. Spoiler, they're not anymore. They're in the 7th spot, which would be play-in range. The Western Conference is really tight, even with the recent losses. So Rockets now 23-14. They are now in the 5 spot. They're tied with the Lakers, but they have the tiebreaker because of Christmas.
And they tonight, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so the Rockets are tied with the Lakers as of our recording, and they are a couple of games back of the Timberwolves, but they have the same amount of losses. And the 2 seed, the San Antonio Spurs, or I guess the Spurs and Nuggets are tied for the 2 seed, has 13 losses. So the Rockets are 1 game back in the loss column. And when you win more games than you lose, it's the loss column that's more meaningful. And the Rockets are 1 game back in the loss column of the 2 seed. So they have underwhelmed. And going into tonight, they were in the 7 seed. I get it's not pretty. They are nowhere near where they should be. And internally, they've fallen short of expectations. But they're also not that far off either. And I think that's important to keep in mind. Unfortunately, you have the number 1 seed, the 34-7 Oklahoma City Thunder, coming in on Thursday. So we'll see what happens. And on paper, even as bad as it's been, they're still right there.
And that is a great glass half full look. And I agree with it because I think that they're close. The only concern I'll add to that before we close is what's coming up. OKC, Minnesota, you got New Orleans. That's a revenge game. And then I believe you got San Antonio. Then you go to the road, Philly and Detroit. You're going to come back here for Memphis and San Antonio. So it's, they blew some opportunities against some really weak teams. And now they've got some games that they need to play. They're basically tougher opponents. So let's see how they do. I'm hoping that they can get things going, and a win against OKC on Thursday would be a great start.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you, Ben. Thank you. Appreciate everybody tuning in and watching the show with us and all the support. Please feel free to leave comments on YouTube if you have questions or anything you want to talk about as far as this game. Big game, Rockets Thunder coming up Thursday. We will see you guys then. Thanks, everybody.